The change of location for the Third Temple is a matter of debate among different religious groups and political parties. Some believe that the Third Temple should be built on the Temple Mount, which is the site of the First and Second Temples, and where Muslims believe that Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. Others argue that the Third Temple should be built elsewhere, preferably in a neutral or non-contested area, to avoid further conflict and violence. In this video, I will discuss the significance of the location of the Third Temple and why it foreshadows something much more serious than a physical landscape. The ideals behind this change of location are based on different religious beliefs and historical perspectives. For Jews, the Temple Mount is the holiest place in Judaism, where they believe that God's presence dwells in the First and Second Temples. They also believed rebuilding the Third Temple would fulfill their messianic hopes and restore their sovereignty over Jerusalem. For Muslims, the Temple Mount is also a sacred site, where they believe that Prophet Muhammad received his first revelation from God and ascended to heaven. They also believe that any attempt to alter or destroy the existing structures on the site will violate God's will and anger him. Some Christians view the Temple Mount as a symbol of God's covenant with Israel and his plan for salvation through Jesus Christ. They also see it as where Jesus prayed before his crucifixion and where he would return at his second coming. To fully grasp the significance of the Third Temple to the Jews, let's first examine the two former temples destroyed centuries ago. Building of the First and Second Temples. The First Temple was built by King Solomon around 957 BCE and was a magnificent structure that housed the Ark of the Covenant, which contained the tablets of the Ten Commandments God gave to Moses at Mount Sinai. The temple was also surrounded by a wall with 12 gates, each named after one of the tribes of Israel. Solomon dedicated the temple in a grand ceremony attended by thousands around Israel and neighboring nations. However, after Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam refused to listen to his elders, who advised him to lighten his burden on the people by reducing taxes and forced labor. The Second Temple was built by King Herod around 515 BCE. It was an impressive structure that expanded on Solomon's design but added new features such as entrances, riwak, colonnades, mikdashim, altars, minbarim, gates, torabim, pools, mikvot, gardens, haramim, etc. The temple was adorned with gold, silver, marble, bronze, precious stones, etc., making it one of the most splendid buildings in ancient times. Herod dedicated the temple in a lavish ceremony attended by many dignitaries from Rome and other countries. However, after Herod died in 4 BCE, his kingdom became chaotic due to civil wars among his successors. Both temples were destroyed during their respective invasions. The First Temple by Babylonians in 587–586 BCE, and the Second Temple by Romans in 70 CE. Just like its predecessors, aside from the superficial edifice of the proposed Third Temple, its location is of profound significance to the faithful. For Jews, rebuilding the Third Temple will fulfill their messianic hopes and restore their sovereignty over Jerusalem. For Muslims, any attempt to alter or destroy existing structures on the site will violate God's will and anger him. Some Christians view the Temple Mount as a symbol of God's covenant with Israel and his plan for salvation through Jesus Christ. They also see it as where Jesus prayed before his crucifixion and where he would return at his second coming. In this same perspective, the temple's location on the Temple Mount means a lot to Muslims. It is the third holiest site in the religion, after Mecca and Medina. It is also the location of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the oldest and largest mosque in Jerusalem, and the Dome of the Rock, a shrine that covers the rock from which Muhammad ascended to heaven. Both structures are considered sacred and beautiful by Muslims and serve as symbols of Islamic history and culture. All through this, one outstanding place also lays significance to the location of the temple, the Pool of Siloam. The discovery of the Pool of Siloam is paramount to the location because it is a site that archaeologists have identified as the original pool mentioned in the Gospel of John, where Jesus healed a blind man. This discovery is significant because it confirms the historical and geographical accuracy of the biblical account and reveals more information about the ancient Jewish practice of bathing in mikvehs, pools. The rituals connected to the pool and the temple are related to the purification and cleansing that Jews performed before entering the temple or other holy places. The Pool of Siloam was used as a mikveh, a place where Jews immersed themselves in water to wash away their sins and impurities. The temple was also a place where Jews offered sacrifices and prayers to God, and where they celebrated festivals and holidays. Both the pool and the temple were considered sacred sites by Jews, and they were visited by pilgrims from different regions who came to worship God and seek His blessings. A repetition of history. Aside from the temple, there's a lot that goes into the ideal of rebuilding. A repetition of history. Rebuilding the Third Temple might end up being a repetition of history because it is a project that has been long awaited by many Jews who believe that it is part of God's plan for Israel and His people. According to some biblical prophecies, such as those found in Jeremiah chapter 33 verses 14 to 18, there will be a time when God will restore His presence among His people in Jerusalem and send a righteous Messiah who will rule over Israel with justice and peace. Rebuilding the Third Temple will trigger events leading to the end times, such as wars, famines, plagues, earthquakes, and signs in heaven. However, not all Jews agree on this interpretation or on how to rebuild the temple according to Jewish law and tradition. Some Jews oppose any attempt to rebuild the temple on or near its current location on Mount Moriah, which is also considered holy by Muslims who claim that it is where Muhammad ascended to heaven during his night journey, another significant tradition in Islam. Other Jews support movements that aim to rebuild different parts of the temple complex or even construct new structures on its site. Let's look at why Siloam is crucial to the temple project. The Pool of Siloam is significant to the temple's location because it is believed to be one of two places where Jesus performed healing miracles according to John's Gospel. In addition to healing a blind man at this pool, in John chapter 9 verses 1 to 11, Jesus also healed another man called Bethesda, in John chapter 5 verses 1 to 15. Both pools were located near Jerusalem's Temple Mount, considered sacred by Jews and Christians at that time. By healing these men at these pools, Jesus demonstrated His authority over sicknesses and diseases, His compassion for those who suffered physically or spiritually, and His fulfillment of God's promises for Israel's salvation through Him. What do the prophecies say? Amidst the ongoing chaos and the scruffle for the Temple Mount by Jews and Muslims, there are ancient prophecies that foretold the rebuilding of the Third Temple as a sign of the end times and the coming of the Messiah. The Third Temple would be a place of worship for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and would be located on the site where Solomon's Temple and the Second Temple once stood. The Third Temple would also symbolize God's presence and power in the world, and fulfill many prophecies from the Hebrew Bible, such as those in Ezekiel, Zechariah, and Revelation. Some Jews believe that rebuilding the Third Temple is part of their covenant with God and that they have to prepare for it spiritually and physically. Many Christians believe that rebuilding the Third Temple fulfills Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 24 verse 15, where He said that the abomination of desolation would stand in the holy place. The abomination of desolation refers to a sacrilegious act or object that defiles God's sanctuary and provokes His wrath. Some Muslims believe that rebuilding the Third Temple is an act of aggression and blasphemy against Islam, which considers Jerusalem as its third holiest city after Mecca and Medina. The temple's location also matters for other reasons, one being the concept of Shekinah or Shekinah. This is related to the idea of God's presence or glory in creation. It is derived from a Hebrew word that means dwelling or abiding. In Judaism, Shekinah is often associated with God's manifestation in nature, especially in light or fire. For example, in Exodus chapter 40 verses 34 to 38, Moses saw God's Shekinah filling the tabernacle with His cloud by day and His fire by night. David also, in Psalms chapter 27, declared that he would dwell in God's Shekinah forever. Thus, rebuilding the Third Temple will again draw God's presence, as the Jews believed. But as the factions keep warring for the location, we shouldn't lose sight of what the Bible says about the temple in the Messianic era. The rebuilding was prophesied to occur in the Messianic era, an abomination of desolation. This is because it involves fulfilling biblical prophecies about God's plan for Israel and Jerusalem, as well as preparing for possible conflicts between Jews and Muslims over control of Jerusalem. Let me pause here to let you know that the war, strife, and chaos are all playing out God's divine agenda as prophesied before time. There are different widespread beliefs about rebuilding the Third Temple among different groups within Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Some Jews support the idea of rebuilding the Third Temple, while others oppose it or prefer other solutions, such as creating alternative sanctuaries or focusing on spiritual aspects of worship. Some Christians support rebuilding the Third Temple, while others oppose it or prefer other solutions, such as praying for peace or promoting interfaith dialogue. Some Muslims oppose the idea of rebuilding the Third Temple, while others accept it or prefer other solutions, such as respecting Jerusalem's status quo or seeking coexistence. The fight for the Temple Mount and the location of the Third Temple is a complex and sensitive issue that involves religious, political, historical, and cultural factors. It has continued to be a source of tension and violence between Jews and Muslims, as well as between Israelis and Palestinians. Both sides claim the site as their own and have different views on how to manage it and what to build on it. The Temple Mount is currently under the administration of the Islamic Waqf. This religious trust oversees the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, which are located on the site. The Waqf does not allow any non-Muslims to pray or perform any religious rituals on the site and restricts their access to certain hours and areas. The Israeli government, on the other hand, led by the current leader of Israel, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, maintains security control over the site and allows Jews and Christians to visit it as tourists, but not as worshippers. Similarly, some Muslim activists and organizations, such as Hamas and the Islamic movement, oppose any Jewish presence or activity on the site, and sometimes incite violence or spread rumors about Israeli plans to destroy or take over the site. These actions often trigger clashes with Israeli security forces or Jewish visitors and sometimes escalate into broader conflicts or intifadas. The situation is further complicated by the involvement of other actors, such as the United States, the United Nations, the European Union, the Arab League, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and various religious leaders and groups who have different opinions and interests on the issue, and sometimes try to mediate or influence the parties involved. The problem is also influenced by the broader context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Middle East peace process, the regional dynamics, and global trends. Therefore, the fight for the Temple Mount and the location of the Third Temple is not only a matter of bricks and stones, but also of faith and identity, history and memory, power, politics, hope and fear, peace and war. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Kindly leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, like and subscribe to keep seeing more videos like this.